let's go there. In terms of the Blaine amendments, do these scholarships, I don't know, violate with states that have those? Do they violate that, or do they violate the Constitution's Establishment Clause?
Yeah, sorry to disappoint, but I have to agree that that the Blaine Amendment is amendments, and we have one in Colorado, and it was one of the primary reasons why the voucher bill that passed, I think, in 2003 was overturned by our state Supreme Court, is discriminatory and doesn't make a lot of sense. And so, but that's not why I personally have a problem with these programs, but yeah, the Blaine Amendment is a problem, and it's helpful to have the tax credit thing both politically, but also because it doesn't end run around it.
Yeah. But I do just in closing, the question is like it's a problem depending on who you ask, right? So we had dinner last night. It was a very good dinner. The chicken wings were excellent. I recommend them. And some people are totally okay with all kinds of streams of government money going to religious institutions in every place but K-12, right? So soup kitchens, hospitals, all kinds of other things, but somehow K-12 is magically different. I would just add on this that the voucher or the tax credit or whatever that everyone, the private school thing that everyone loves is pre-K. And we know entrepreneurial women, particularly women of color, are building businesses in pre-K, so it's a good thing there. But lots of churches and sort of faith-based institutions play in the pre-K space. New Jersey has a sort of robust program on this. This is people would the middle class folks in my bird, which luckily gets free pre-K. State, they would kill you if you tried to take the pre-K voucher away. And lots of them choose private and religious institutions. So it's just it's an interesting distinction without a difference depending on who you talk to.
Well, and there's also, of course, government money that goes to religious institutions, be it scholarship grants to send students to universities that are religious-based and religious institutions. Or, again, to your earlier point in terms of tax credits, there are certainly tax credits for any number of things that do ostensibly, if you give a credit, you're taking money out of a general fund. So why, Van, is this why are these different than those tax credits, than a tax credit to the film industry or a scholarship that a student gets to attend a private institution that's based in religion or otherwise, not a state university?
Yeah, no, great question. I guess I'd start out by saying I think we have a crisis in this country and in our cities. I think I looked up the numbers last night. Chicago, I think, has something like 14% of kids that start out as ninth graders end up with some kind of college degree or certificate. Fewer than half of the kids that graduate from Chicago public schools can read at grade level, according to NAEP. In the next couple of years, the projections are that about 70% of kids, or what will be adults, will require some kind of post-secondary certificate in order to get a job. So there's a massive disconnect between what our public education system is doing right now and what we need. And it's not because teachers are lazy, and it's not because, there's graft or whatever the criticisms are. The system was never designed to do what we need it to do. And it's sort of I describe it as sort of a Model T, and we're needing a Tesla, and we keep adding stuff to the Model T, and it doesn't quite work. So I just want to be really clear, and I'm guessing that Jarrell agrees with me. We are in a crisis situation. And so from a policy perspective, I say, okay, well, let's say I have $100 million to throw at this issue. Or I have $1 billion, or I only have, a smaller amount. My question to policymakers is, what is it that you're trying to solve? Okay? So if it's just giving people choices for the sake of choices, okay, that's fine. If the community decides that that's important, that's a important community value, then I would say, that's cool. I'm not a choice for choice sake. I think choice is a vehicle, and I believe in choice. But I want better outcomes. And so when I review the research around whether or not these programs are working nationally, it's too early to tell here in Illinois. It depends on the particular study at the particular time. You look at the Urban Institute, which is sort of a very credible national research body. I think that they found, Matt Chingos found that in Florida, kids did better under their voucher tax scholarship program, slightly better than the Florida kids, the regular kids. They looked at the DC program, it was the reverse. So, depending on who you talk to, either these programs are marginally better or marginally worse from already low-performing public schools. So I guess I just ask the question, and I would ask policymakers, say, well, what's the deal? What are you focused on? And again, if I can get into this more, but even if the focus is around choice, then I'd say, well, choice is only effective when families have lots of information about how schools are performing and what they do, and having lots of different choices. And so, and this is one of the reasons why I'm a big proponent and believer in charter schools, for instance. At least there's an opportunity to have some accountability and also information or data. That's less true in private school vouchers. Again, I would say, hey, if you guys want to have a program, if policymakers in Illinois think that this is worth spending $100 million on for one reason or another, that's cool. I don't see much information that suggests that this is going to solve what I think is probably, maybe next to one or two other things, the most important crisis this country is having.
So this is going to be, we don't want to spend all day on this or anything, but if you had $100 million to spend, where would be it better directed to influence those outcomes?
Yeah, I think it depends on the particular context. So, but I think there's a variety of different things. It might be 0 to 4, depending on whether or not there's an existing quality pre-K program. There may be, there may be a need to rethink, how charters are done in Chicago, for instance. Or there's just a variety of different things, but I would base it on what we know about what works, rather than base it on an ideology of one kind or another.
And then, Terrell, why don't you drill into a bit choice, and should that be a priority, particularly for children who aren't happy with their neighborhood public school? Should it be that top priority?
Yeah, I just want to say, in Newark, we had $100 million. I'm happy to tell you what happened. This is it's a difficult question, because choice, like discipline, is both a policy and a value, right? And they live so close to one another that you design for the value you're trying to evince, right? And so if you have a state that is we care about closing achievement gaps for low-income kids, New York, New Jersey, you would design a very different private school choice policy than if you were trying to broadly help parents pick schools that they were interested in going to. Pennsylvania, right? The EITC in Pennsylvania is sort of largely like a supporting vehicle for working class families who want to send their kids to Catholic schools. It gets business involved, whatever. So different values in those states, different policy manifestations in those states. The one other thing I would just say, though, is I think Van's point about what you want to do versus $100 million, $1 billion is a really important question. But the coincident question is, for how many people do you want to do it, and how quickly? And so one of the things that I always sort of get on about like charter schools too, and in particular private school choice programs, is the time to go live, the immediacy, and though it might not be a lot of people, the impact for the people for whom it is high and immediate, right? So in Newark, this is like the joke about the $100,000 to $100 million, $200 million. So I was working in Newark when we got the Facebook grant, and Oprah was like, $100 million. I know you guys know who Oprah is. I had some ideas about how what we could do with the program. Newark also has like a very high performing charter school sector. About 40% of the kids in the district are in charters. It's one of the districts that I would say the teacher policy stuff I worked on actually was helpful because Kami Anderson and then Chris Serve afterwards were sort of astute and dogged about using the evaluation framework to kind of like improve teacher practice, which is not something I would say happened every other place in Newark. But like that policy did not implement itself, if that makes any sense. But Newark spends $1 billion a year already, like $22,000 a student. And the point I've made to people was like $100 million, like though philanthropically it seems like a huge amount of money, compared to what Newark spends, it's like a drop in the bucket. Like you just look at the scale and the ability to tax, like the taxing power is awesome. And so like when you decide, like 44,000 kids, or like 16,000 kids, whatever, even though it's only $100 million, like the effect to those kids is like limitless. And so I do think, like, and then to transition back to this, the conversation of some versus all, right, with every resource in a universe of scarcity, real or perceived, is an important one, right? And like goods that more people can access versus fewer people, it's a difficult question, right? Because all questions about politics are about who gets what in a framework of limitation. But I think we consistently undersell how important $100 million or $10 million, $50 million, or $6,600, which I guess is the average amount of the scholarship, means to the one kid who actually winds up being in a place with the right fit. And I think we should weigh that equally, even if it feels like a benefit more broadly distributed would be fairer.
Yeah, maybe just to respond a little bit. I don't.
Please.
Okay, I don't question how important it is for a particular family that wants to send their kid to a particular school and possibly the benefits of that for that family. I think the same could be said for family, because I've heard it and seen it, for families that have gone to the worst public schools where the superintendent is wanting to close that public school, but for one reason or another, it may have something to do with the great coach that they have, or maybe that wonderful 10th grade English teacher. They think that that's a life-changing experience for that kid and that family. So I guess I come back to the question, which is, hey, I'd be on your side if I saw enough information that convinced me that this was game-changing, one, for the families that participate in it, and I guess I don't see a lot of evidence of that, and two, if I thought it was going to have a positive impact on improving the other 90% of kids that aren't participating in these sorts of programs. And I don't see either of those things. So from my perspective, as I described the crisis before, I think it's a distraction. And I also think that it's so politically charged on both sides that it adds to an even greater distraction because I think that sometimes folks have this false belief that, let's say, are on the pro-voucher side that, oh, wow, this thing is totally game-changing for all those 4,000 kids or whatever it is. And, oh, by the way, it's going to drive competition in Chicago public schools. And, man, Chicago public schools is going to get so much better as a result of this. Neither of those things, actually, I think, again, you guys could show me wrong. I mean, it'll be interesting to come back and look at the research report in whatever 5 years.
Right.
But all the other programs, and there are a lot of them, and then a lot of them have been around for a long time. Again, Milwaukee's is different, but yeah, and it's also like. Anyway, I'll stop there.